Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it? I can hear myself reverberating back. Well, it is my honor to be here and be able to speak. George, I was George's second choice, which doesn't bother me too much because the guy that didn't have time to come today is a personal friend of mine, and he is much more knowledgeable than I and a much better speaker. Well, I think I just broke this thing. But anyway, I'm going to give it a shot. And although I've never spoken here, I've spoken in a lot of other places, and I'm fairly comfortable with it. First thing I'd like to do is share a little bit about where I've been and how I've come to the realizations that I have come to. In the 90s, all throughout the 90s, I was following a religion called Chunkaluta, which is a Lakota word which means the Red Road. I started off, someone suggested that perhaps I go up to Four Winds on a Sunday afternoon. They had a little ceremony up there and I might like it. Well, I went up there and I got inside a sweat lodge and I felt like I had come home. I was in there and I was absolutely equal in there, in that we all sat in a circle and no one was mobile, so everybody was was experiencing the same thing. It's the first time I had really experienced equality, and that we were all there to pray, and no one told us who to pray to. We were, and no one told us we had to pray. We were all feeling the heat from the rocks, and it didn't matter how much money I had in the bank. It didn't matter what my last name was or my first name. It didn't matter, what my skin color was. We were all black in there, and. So I got to experience, for a short period of time, a reality of, and being absolutely connected to the people who were there with me. Because if you take away all of our senses, all of the things that we use to identify people in the world and categorize them and judge them and all those things, we're all kind of reduced to spirit. And that's what a sweat lodge does for us, because it's made in there entirely and completely dark and black for a reason. And so I kept going back time after time, and after a while I became part of the crew who put it on. They had asked me to go and start the fire early, because it takes hours to prepare for that ceremony. And then we began to do sweat lodges in other places, and I became part of the brotherhood that ran that sweat lodge. And all of the other guys were all Native Americans. I'm not Native American. I do not pretend to be, have any blood that is Native American. And all the other guys, they were sun dancers. And of course I wasn't a sun dancer. And they never suggested that I become a sun dancer. And but one time when I was in a particularly hot lodge, I had a vision of me dancing, and I told them, and they were happy, and they were sad at the same time. They told me, "Wow, we had hoped that you would come to that realization that perhaps you were supposed to dance, but we're sad too, because it's a hard road to go. It's a hard thing to do, because they travel to South Dakota every year and spend 2 weeks up there at great expense to themselves, and it's a hot and physically demanding ceremony. But they said, do not worry, because we will dance on either side of you, and we will get you through. And so time came that there was a dance that was going to go at Greengrass in South Dakota, which is where they keep the calf pipe, the original pipe. And they were going to bring it out that year. And so we decided we would go up and I would go with them. And we got up there and they lent me a pipe, because you have to have a chanupa, which is a pipe that you pray with, because the whole ceremony is all about prayer in a specific way. And so I got up there, and because I had a full beard. I hadn't cut my hair for many years. I didn't cut my hair for 10 years. It was down to my waist by the time that I cut it. That's at the end of the story. But I got up there, and we went in the night, in the dark. Sometime just before daylight, I felt something, a hand on my shoulder. And there was a guy who said, "Are you Lakota?" And I said, what? He said, "Are you Lakota?" And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, the elders said you can't dance." And I said, "Well, okay." I was crushed. I'd come all this time, and I'd been, participating in sweat lodges for years and preparing myself. And they said, "But we would really like for you to stay inside and work with the fire keepers and support the dancers." I said, "Well, okay. If that's the only job I got, I'll do it. I'll do it gladly." And so we did, and it was just a time that was very, very important to me. I'll never forget it, because those days and I would, not being able to get around very good. I can crawl into sweat lodges and get the rocks out. There's things that I can do that is specifically within my realm of physical limitations. And at the end of that time, on about the third day, one of the things that you do as a helper in that is that the dancers are kind of sequestered away from everyone else, because it's a holy time for them. And so their families and people who want to communicate to them, they speak to them through the helpers. So they would call me, and if they were bringing tobacco or whatever, and they would bring it and they would give it to the helper, and then we would give it to the dancers. And on the third day, they started bringing this stuff, some tobacco, and I would say, "Well, who is this for?" And they say, "That's for you." I thought, well, wow, that's kind of special. But after a while, there was quite a bit of it. And I guess that what had happened was that they realized that through my actions, not my words, but that I was there just to pray and to help them with their ceremony, and they wanted to give me a gift, because tobacco in the Native American way is a sacred herb that they give when they're honoring something, when they're asking for something to be given to them, so it was really good. And I got to notice, and some of the dancers out there were whiter than me. There were some guys out there that had red hair and creamy white skin, and I didn't know that, at the time. And what had happened was that had I answered that question, "Are you Lakota?" yes, that they would have taken that at face value, because Lakota, just as most tribal names mean, just the people. And if I'd have said, "I'm one of the people," they would not have questioned it. They would have let me dance. But see, I did my dance just in a different way, because I had just gotten out of the hospital. I had pneumonia just a week or two before, and God was taking care of me. I don't know that I would have had the strength to do it. So I left there feeling with mixed feelings that I had really participated in something that was beyond this world and beyond my experience, but that but I was kind of crushed that that I wasn't going to be able to dance. Well, the next year, maybe it was 2 years later, I had a brother from Ignacio that came down. He said, came to visit me at my house, and he said, "Do you still want to dance?" I said, "Well, I still got that vow that I took." And he said, "Well, I dance in a place where they allow white people to dance, and they let diabetics dance, and it's a family dance, and there are not so many restrictions, and if you want to dance, I'll make it happen. So I said, okay, let's do that. So I went up to a place by Mobridge, South Dakota. I don't know if you know where that is. It's up in the north central part of South Dakota, not far from the North Dakota south border. And it's by a town, the Lakota town is called Wokpala. And it's right outside of Mobridge. And that is where those people were Sitting Bull's people. And they were the people who traveled from Wokpala down to Pine Ridge, where the Red Cloud Agency is, and they made it as far as Wounded Knee, which is just a few miles outside of Pine Ridge, and there was a massacre, and many of you probably know about that. And those people. So I got up there and I went to the uncle, Lekshi, his uncle, and he's the guy who ran the dance. His name was Alvin Ducheneau, and I said, I'd like to dance, and I gave him some tobacco. And he chewed skull, and so I took his skull, and that's okay, it's tobacco. Tobacco is tobacco. And he said, you don't look very strong. He said, so I'll let you dance one day, and then we'll take a look at it. And so there's a lot of preparations. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not going to share with you today because they're very, very sacred for me. And but I want to share the spirit, and I want to get to that term, all my relations, which is very important part of this whole thing. And anyway, so he said, okay, one day. So I got in there and we danced, and then the next day I got up and I danced, and then they always have a PA system, and they love to talk on this PA system, and Alvin got on there. He never talked to me or nothing. He said, he's gonna go the whole way. So it's a 4-day dance, and I danced that time, and I danced for 4 years, and I danced every turn, every day, and it was only, through the grace of God, the feeling of a different energy. When you get into a circle that is set up for a specific purpose, and you're asking for energy, the energy comes. It's hard to explain with words, and it's a really experiential thing. But it's an arbor that's set up in a circle, and we put a tree in the middle, a live tree that we have just cut down, and they make robes and prayer flags, and they bundle them with tobacco, and they pray over these things, and the whole village comes and puts these in the tree while it's laying down, and then the tree is raised, and those prayers are up for the whole universe to see for a whole year. And it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful way of doing things. Well, all of the Lakota, and it's not that much different from other tribes, as Carol could probably tell you. Carol is Shoshone, but it's her beliefs are probably not that much different. Practices are not that much. All the Plains Indians, in particular, had a lot of their beliefs in common, and one of the beliefs that permeates through all of the ceremonies, and in fact, their ceremonies are only a reflective part of their life. They don't separate ceremony from their life. All of life is a ceremony, and all of life is about being connected to the Creator, to the earth, and to all people on the planet, and all of the things on the planet. And so a couple of months back or something, Jenny was reading something, and she came across this word that she was having a little difficulty from. And I rudely hollered out from the back, Mitakuyasen. That is a Lakota word that is a complete prayer in itself. And that word, it's actually a couple of words put together, mitakuyeoyasin, but we say it really fast. I say mitakuyasin. That means to all my relations. And so every time we cross a threshold, every time we finish a prayer, every time that something comes to a completion, we say mitakuyasin. Mitakuyasin is an acknowledgement that all things are related, that we are not separate, and that these and when we go into Sweat Lodge, we go into Sundance Harbor, whatever we're doing, that we are acknowledging to the universe and to ourselves that I'm doing this because I'm connected to all things, and that this is Wakan. Wakan means sacred or holy, and the Lakota term for God is Wankan Tonka, which means the great holy or the great mystery, the great holy, the big holy. And the Lakota also, they have an intercessor. So they were created, they were converted to Christianity fairly easily, once they got them to quit trying to resist and kill all the soldiers. They have, and that entity or person's name is called Tunkashala. And I don't know the full translation, but that's the intercessor. When we pray to Tunkashala to intercede for us, to act as a go-between man, us, and the universe. Just very much as Jesus is an intercessor, Buddha is an intercessor, Shiva, all the ones that we know that have been people on this earth are intercessors between us and the universe. And so that's pretty constant throughout almost all society. And that my relation, when we would pray, we pray to take pity on Unshimalia, to take pity on the people of the earth, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, those that fly, those that swim in the water, those that crawl on their bellies, the tall standing brothers, the trees, and and also the rocks, the slow-moving people. Okay, they move slow. Because in their way of thinking, all things have spirit. Everything on the planet, everything we can perceive with our senses has a spirit and comes from God. And so even the earth has a spirit. The sun has a spirit, the moon has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. And that when we say that word, mitakuyasin, it's acknowledging our connectedness to all those things in the spirit. It's a beautiful way of living. And there is no hell. There's no condemnation in any of those things. Were introduced by the white man when he came. Even the ownership. Lakota don't believe in ownership. That's why they were tricked out of the Black Hills so easy, is because how could someone own a mountain? You don't own a mountain. But in law and in the way of the white man, well, things are owned. And there's papers that are written that says I own this. But that was a foreign concept to most Native Americans, because how could you own your mother? They consider the earth their mother, and the sky their father. And there are 7 directions. When George was talking about the symbols of the Native American, well, there are many symbols, and not just the Thunderbird. But one of the symbols that are common almost throughout between all the tribes are the 4 directions, or the 7 directions. Medicine people talk about 7 directions. They're the directions of the north, south, east, and west. there's down, which is the earth, and there's up, which talks about the sky or the spirit or God. And the seventh direction is the most holy of all. And that is the direction that goes right through us as individuals. That's the seventh direction. It acknowledges that, we are as important as all the other directions, no more or less important, and that we need, and that when we say mitakuye-oyasin, we're acknowledging that holiness and specialness in all things, not only our brothers, but in all things. And it's a beautiful way of living. It is not contrary to what we learn in Course in Miracles. We learn in conversations with God. All these things, because those and the more I think that science, analyzes and categorizes and labels and boxes things, the more that they have come to understand that all things are related, that they're not separate, and that when one part of this of the whole gets out of balance and does something that's harmful, it affects the other parts about. That's the whole thing about the environmental movement, is they're saying, well, we're not treating our mother in a sacred way. We're poisoning the rivers and polluting the air and all that stuff, and that it affects the whole. And that's the real pity in it. But nature and God has ways to cleanse itself. It is not, nature is not indefensible. A river will cleanse itself every so 100 feet if it's running smoothly. The air will cleanse itself. The oceans will cleanse themselves, because it's when the Native Americans think of that as it's the mother. Many of us know about Gaia. Gaia is a way of thinking, and these of course none of the Native American things were written down. That's why they didn't have as much power. Because one of the things that the people who conquered this country had that others didn't, they had words. They were written down. They could be duplicated. They could be, forced on people. And all the natives, they never wrote anything down. They passed them down, father to son, mother to daughter, all time after time. And these teachings and these ways of being were all sacred, and it made life sacred. Whenever your teachings are sacred, and your life is given meaning, it makes everything sacred. And so, to say mitakuye-oyasin is a powerful thing, and it goes much deeper than most people realize in the beginning. And I just wanted to explain that and I'm really glad that George asked me to speak today. So I don't know if he'll ever do it again, but he did it today. And so, and if you have any questions, I would be willing to share anything. I have no secrets in my life today, but I don't inflict my life and experience on people without them asking. Okay, so if you have questions, I'll be way willing to answer anything that I can. But anyway, that was just one of the lives that I've had within my life. And in 1999, in December, I had finished my 4th year of dancing. That summer, I had my wopila, which is called a wopila. In the Lakota way of being, you're not regarded for what you own, the possessions that you have. You are regarded for what you give away. And wopila is gratitude. It's wopila. It means that I'm grateful. And so, on the 4th year, the village doesn't give you gifts. You give gifts to everyone else, and you have 4 years to do that. And that shows a gratitude, and so I think that is a beautiful way of being. Also, we learn not too long ago about these highly evolved beings that we're trying to become, and many of those attributes were already here, perhaps for hundreds, perhaps for thousands of years before people came and said, well, we know a better way, and you're savages, and you don't know what how to live life. We're going to teach you how to live life. But if you read about those highly evolved beings, the Hebs that we read about in Conversations with God, that society had as much in common with what was here already. So, but there's also the Hindu beliefs about Shiva, and I can't remember the other god, but it's the destroyer and the replenisher, the restorer and replenisher. And that is the cycle of life. So things are attained, they're lost, they're attained again, and then they're lost again. That is the cycle of life. So, okay, so I guess that's all that I have. I just have only one thing to say, mitakuye.